We're recording. Welcome to Yellow Chair Collective podcast. We are Sujin Lee and
Linda Yin.
the co-directors of the Yellow Chair Collective. Today, we're continuing our conversation on the eldest daughters of immigrant families, a topic that resonates deeply with so many of our community members. We're joined by two of our amazing group facilitators, Helen Garcia and Esther Lee, both licensed clinical social workers at the Yellow Chair Collective, who also led our eldest daughter support groups. Welcome, Helen and Esther.
Hi, this is Helen.
This is Esther.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome to our podcast. Good to have you. We are so happy to have you, Esther and Helen. We want to start our podcast by asking this question. What is your favorite part about being an oldest daughter?
Esther, do you want to go first?
I guess I'd have to say that my favorite part of being an eldest daughter is when it comes to taking care of other people, I can trust that I know what I'm doing and I'm good at it.
I think I resonate with that too, but I think that like being an eldest daughter, you're thrust with all of this responsibility to kind of know everything and to kind of understand how to adapt and to move through things all the time. So like especially as like an immigrant, like my parents would ask me to do X, Y, and Z for my sister. But I think what I love about that, because it does have its repercussions, right, with like control and anxiety, I feel like it's made me really good at gauging a situation, understanding how to talk to people better. And I think in bullet points. I'm like, okay, bullet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is what I need to do. This is how I'm going to maneuver. And I actually think it's made me good about like community organizing too. Yeah, that's like my favorite part. It has its like, it's a double-edged sword, I think. So
Yeah. I feel like you both have just discussed about one of the key characteristics of being an eldest daughter too, like adaptability and caretaking. And at the same time, you both express that those are your favorite things, actually, right? Like we've adapted them to be our strengths and we enjoy them too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about you, Susan? What's your favorite part about being an eldest daughter?
Well, as an eldest daughter, not just as a general characteristics, but as a eldest daughter to my brother, I love the control element of being able to be in that character, especially when we were growing up and we had like pretend play, I get to be the character that's the teacher that has the power and the control and telling him what to do growing up. To be my favorite. I'm sure he hates it so much. It is what it is.
Yeah, similarly, I shared this in other episode before too, but when I was younger, my sister will bring her friends, like little friends, right? And then I'll be like, "Hey, you want to play teacher?" And then I'll be the teacher.
And you would give them homework.
In my defense, I was giving them free tutoring, And then my sister's friends will be like so like bored out of their mind later. They're like, "Can we go home?" They're like, "No, you gotta finish that worksheet."
Linda, that short that I published about your sister's homework got over 2K views on YouTube. Like it's actually it's the stuff that's of the real stuff.
Yeah, it resonates.
Yeah.
Well, we are talking about, different family dynamics and our sibling dynamics here. And so why don't we get started with a little bit of an intro of your family backgrounds a little bit.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, so I immigrated here when I was about 5, like a month away from turning 6. So I'm the oldest of 2 from I'm 1.5 gen, so my parents are first gen. So I grew up in a first gen Filipino American home. My parents worked a lot, so a lot of my responsibilities growing up was taking care of my sister and teaching her, tutoring her, kind of teaching her social skills. So I think my role in the family was always like be the responsible one, know what to do, work your way through things, don't ask for help because we're too busy, rightly so. So that's like a bubble of where I came from. Yeah. What about you, Esther?
So very simple. Helen and I have a lot of similarities. Actually, a fun fact too, my sister went to school with Helen.
We were friends, yeah.
They were friends in high school, and so there's a lot of overlap too.
Yeah. Deborah.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, Deb.
Shout out to my sis. Love her. But yeah, it's me and my younger sister. I'm the eldest of a home of 2. daughters. We grew up our whole lives as pastors' kids. Both of my parents are ordained ministers, and then like all of the men on both sides of our family are also 99% of them are also pastors. And so my responsibility as the eldest daughter extended beyond just the home and extended into church and like the whole congregation. And we immigrated here when I was 6. And so I held a lot of that responsibility of not just translator, but also cultural interpreter and just the person to kind of try new things in a new setting with my parents who relied heavily on me in a lot of ways.
I think like what you're talking about being relied on as the eldest daughter is definitely a shared theme across all the eldest daughters as well. And I think we'll talk a lot more about that in this podcast episode. We have two main themes that we wanted to address today. One is a little bit later on discussing about how and ways that we heal together. And then the first one that we'll be addressing is more around this idea of like adaptability or hyperflexibility as eldest daughters. Would you two give us a little bit of like a background around like what is adaptability and then how does that actually manifest as eldest daughters?
When I think about adaptability, what came to mind was being able to adapt to the needs of those around us. And, each person is unique in in the stories that they hold, the lives that they've led, the perspectives that they have, and their needs. And so adaptability, when you say adaptability, what I come to mind is what does each person need that's unique to them? And then how can I meet their unique need? And which then does sometimes translate into like creating pieces of myself to kind of hand out to each person.
Imagery resonates a lot with me. Like, yeah, I'm thinking about, okay, what does this person need? What does that person need? Like every single situation, but not only just situationally, but individual, right? It could be the same situation, but depending on the different individual that I'm with, the needs are different. And so there's always a constant thought around that. But the adaptability part isn't just the thinking, it's also the actionable steps of like, okay, I'm now going to give this part of myself to this individual because that's what they're in need of at that moment. So that imagery is really landing with me right now, Esther.
Yeah. The thing that came to mind when you were talking about meeting everyone's unique need, when I was in school, I kind of picked up on these social cues that I felt like my role in any relationship was to give and be generous to that person. But it came to a point where like I had friends that had the courage to speak up and say like, "Hey, I noticed that you're always in the position of listening, you're always giving, and you're always like trying to figure out how you can help people. Like sometimes we just want you to be." And I think that like when it comes to adaptability, I think eldest daughters are taught or primed in their caregiving role to always know and anticipate what's next and to be available all the time. And even in leading like eldest daughter group, one of the things that we talked about is like, I feel like I always have to be flexible and adaptable. I always have to reschedule when I need to reschedule. I have to have a job that allows me to care for my family while also taking care of my direct family. And it's exhausting. And so just the mental and physical strength that it takes to carry like a family of 5 in your mind and in your head. You're constantly thinking about if I do this, then it'll affect this, which will affect that. Right. So it's like you're constantly thinking in spider webs and like second and third and fourth consequence. And so I think for me, it's made me extremely detail oriented in the way that I show up for people, but also like to a detriment to myself. So a lot of the healing work that I've had to do, given what Esther just said about like spiritual work, is like I've had to develop genograms and like family dynamic systems as to how like that family pattern has been passed down through generations. And so the work that I've done in my personal therapy is like emotionally healthy spirituality is coming from a place of like, where have I come from and how do I break past family patterns so that I could show up in a healthier way? But again, like that doesn't mean that any of my faults go away at all. Like it comes up constantly of like, oh man, like I'm not even listening to this person. I'm thinking about like, I can give them this, I can host this, I can do that, da, 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 da. And I'm like, I'm constantly having to filter that always of just be present, just be present, just be here. So yeah.
Linda, I wanted to hear
Yeah,
any
yeah.
response.
I was reflecting on what Esther and Helen shared about flexibility, right? I think it also speaks to just overarching theme of mental load, to burden that a lot of daughters carry, a lot of oldest childs carry, a lot of women carry in the society. And then, when you're oldest daughter, you're all three things and more. It's almost like, and then I went to imageries about being a mother, right? Like what's expected, especially in this society. You're the caretaker, you're the organizer, you make sure people are okay, right? Nurture. Somehow, we're expected to carry all that from usually from a young age too, especially if you grew up in immigrant families. You were expected to help out your younger siblings, anybody who's younger in your family, your parents. Like you have to really adopt and be flexible and be taking a lot of different roles, right? And a lot of times that cost of at cost of you, right? Like your needs and your wants. A lot of times, when we work with the oldest daughters, sitting in therapy room is their first time kind of sitting down and reflecting back sometimes, right? That I live such a chameleon life that I don't know what I actually need or I want. I feel like that's a common theme that we end up hearing, even in groups and therapy session. Not all, but that comes up. So those are my thoughts currently.
Yeah. And then one other thing, Helen, that you had addressed was that intergenerational piece too, right?
Mhm.
And that you just talked about all the different ways that the eldest daughters have this intersectional identities woven into ourselves, which is giving us a lot of similar messages about having to be, perfect in certain ways, having to adapt and having to caregive. And then Helen, you also addressed like the intergenerational piece too. On my part, like my mother is also the eldest daughter. My grandmother is
Same.
also the eldest daughter, and it's like this line of eldest daughters, yeah,
Oh,
in our family. Uh-huh.
I forgot to mention, I'm also third generation oldest daughter, so high five, Helen.
Whoa.
Yay! Yeah, air
That's
fives to all the
wild.
third generation of eldest daughters here.
That's
Yeah.
so wild. You know what's interesting though? Like my grandma
Mm.
is the second of
Mhm.
five, but the
Mhm.
firstborn was treated in high regard where she wasn't really the eldest, if you will, in like
Mm.
the family dynamic. My grandma was the one that was getting the groceries, taking care of everyone, financially supporting. And then my mom, I could see like the lineage because my mom lives with my grandma and I visit from time to time. And all of us are so caretaking. Like when I got married, my mom was like, your job is to care for your husband, to like be there for him, to cook for
Yes.
him. Like it's almost like being away from that for a while gave me the perspective of like, oh, this is always what's been expected of me.
Mhm.
Where like it's not the same for my sister who's the youngest. Like her standards are almost like just take care of yourself. So it's just wild how it is very intersectional. But yeah. What I'm curious though about like what healing work did y'all have to do to kind of understand and map those intergenerational traumas? Like what was like the aha?
I wonder if there's really, the complete state of being healed, right?
Yeah.
It's a journey, it's a process, layers. And I feel like I'm still learning ways that surprise me, right? Oh, like this is an oldest daughter trait or the oldest daughter trauma that's like creep on me coming out. It's so dissecting. But for me, Helen, I resonate with you so much because I feel like I always have known, but then there was definitely moments of like, hey, wait a minute, like what's expected of me is not what expected of my sister, younger sister. And then just touching back on like generations of being an oldest daughter of oldest daughters. I know there's a discourse on social media, having an oldest daughter mother and being oldest daughter, and then having a youngest daughter mother and then being an oldest, like that discourse and dynamic also changes, which is really really fascinating to me. But for me, I feel like just being able to take some time away from my family, right? Like as soon as I had opportunity to go to college, I was like, I'm not going in state. Like I'm not staying in California where I grew up. So that was very intentional because I definitely needed, even though I didn't have all the words or awareness at that age, like I knew that I needed a break, a time away, a space, and having that, and then having space to become my own person in somewhat. The responsibility didn't go away. There's the phone call away letting me know your sister needs you. You need to talk to your sister. I need help on this, like constant. But having my own space, allowed to be me and then see what I want and do what I want. That was start of the healing for sure. And through my own journey of like how the family dynamic have affected me, right? Like a support group like that, or discussions around being an oldest daughter. Like really, like when you name it, you can kind of tame it, right? So I feel like it's hard to describe because it's not just one moment of healing, but then it's just continual ways that I'm still finding myself. Like earlier, there was a mention of a little bit touch on how our values and identity gets wrapped around like who we are to other people as an oldest daughter. And there was a moment definitely I realized that I think another podcast talking about an oldest daughter is that there's a deep part of me that didn't feel worthy unless I have something to contribute, because that was my role always, giving, contributing, nurturing, caring. If I just want to be, not do any of those roles, do I have value? So it was really fascinating to, as we were talking about this topic more and then learning more, it's like how much of that dynamic of family role impacted me in this society, my professional role, with my friends, colleagues, all that. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm a therapist and social worker because I was an oldest daughter. I'm sure there's an aspect of that, a big one.
I'm sure we can all relate to that as, therapists that are sitting in this room. Esther, I would love to hear more from you as well about your kind of recognizing healing journey and putting the pieces together, right, as eldest daughter and what this means, and especially having this intersection also having a family dynamic of being a PK and yeah.
Pastor's kid.
Yeah, I mean, everything, yes. Everything that Linda said 100% resonate. And I've shared this with each of you. I even shared it with we had our final support group for my cohort, for the eldest daughter's cohort, this past week. And we were sharing reflections, and I was just really honest with them. I was like, I was really nervous about this group because I don't feel like I have my eldest daughter stuff figured out. And what is that? What is that stuff? I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. But really, like, being in that space was so validating for me. And what felt the most validating was that we are truly on our own journeys. And similar to Linda, as soon as I had the first opportunity to leave the house, I left. I literally went to the other side of the country. I'm from LA, went to college in New York. I stayed there for as long as I could. And then even when I ultimately did move back, it wasn't planned. It was just like the world had shut down, COVID pandemic. I'm going to just take this opportunity to spend some time with my family. And then it just kind of happened that way. And then it wasn't actually until a few years after, once I had already moved back in with my parents, I was starting to help out at their church again, that I realized. And then actually, I guess the pivotal point for me was when my sister decided to move back to the New York area and I stayed. And then I realized I was growing a lot of resentment around, like, why am I here? Why is it just me? And it feels like I'm the only one who's responsible for my parents. And I'm sure if she were here, like, a lot of that load would be shared. But proximity, birth order, all of that stuff really put me in this position of, and I'll be honest, like, I don't know how much of it is my parents who really put that on me versus like just training over the years, or like pressure that I put on myself. Probably a mix of all of the above. But I put all this pressure on myself, or I was feeling all this pressure to be such a caretaker for my parents. And during that time, we had a lot of just like family stuff, death, loss, grief, a lot of that stuff that I felt like I had to hold a lot of by myself. And my sister gets to be back in New York in the life that we had each individually created, but also together. And New York was a time, I always see that time as my time of freedom. And like, it's probably something I'm still processing. Because coming back has been healing in that it's home, and like, this is where I'll always be taken care of. But it's also at the same time this place where I have so much responsibility for everyone else. And there's really high expectations, especially being a pastor's kid. I mean, I think I've like exposed my church people enough to like when I first came back to LA, my head was completely shaved, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, pastor's daughter." And we're like a Korean Presbyterian church, like classic, traditional. Pastor's daughter has no hair. Is she okay? Like, even now, like I still have colored hair and
Mm.
stuff like that. And so, like, I think they have a flavor of the freedom that or my wild side, I guess. We'll just call it that. But even with that, they still have like all these really high expectations of me, that are compounded, and it becomes my pressure that I put on myself too as the eldest daughter.
Hearing a lot of, as to like ways that you're holding space for continual process, which is necessary. I think that identity piece of the fact that we're eldest daughters is not going away.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we become mothers of our own, as we become grown-ups, as we age in different stages of development, it's still not going away. We're still eldest daughters. Some of the characteristics that are gonna stay with us. And so just holding lots of different parts of us that are still grieving and also moving forward. I think that's really great. But also, like I hear you exploring a part that is like the inner child, which I love exploring for myself too as part of my healing. It's like, okay, there's this wild part of me that really wants to be creative, that wants to color my hair and shave off my hair and let that actually be, let that exist. And everyone else is just going to have to deal with the fact that this part is still existing in me as well, as much as I still care for other people too. And so I hear that from you, and I love that. Helen, what about you? What is your healing journey looking like?
This entire time, I was thinking to myself, all of us have weird hair journeys. But Sujin, I'm wondering if you ever had your own like funky hair journey, but that's like a side question. Well, I think similar to Linda's story and Esther's story too, like college was kind of like I have a lot to work on for myself. I think like the first dating relationship that I was in, like I didn't really know what was going on for me. Like all of it is like I know something's wrong. I know something's off in the way that I'm functioning in this relationship. And then I had a friend, Nelson, who's like, "Oh, I'm going to therapy. It's like free on campus." So I started going to therapy, and for the first time, someone was asking me how I felt. And it was almost like I didn't know how to answer because no one had ever asked me, like, when this person does this, how does that make you feel? Why are you crying? Like, tell me how you're feeling. And it was the first time I actually had to verbalize. And so my first therapist did like the really hard work of getting me to open up. And it didn't, long story short, it didn't work out between the two of us because, like, campus therapy, I guess you only get 8 free sessions. So I started to look at therapy elsewhere because even though I was like resistant initially, like I still wanted to keep going in my healing journey. And so my second therapist was like actually having me journal and like write down. And so like journaling and writing have been really close to my heart because it's actually helped me understand what it was that was happening in my body because my body was reacting before I had like the cognitive knowledge of everything. And so a lot of my healing practices have been like somatic based. And then now it's just a lot of exploring my own intersectionalities. And I'm like speaking about like birth order. I feel like being the oldest is very different from being the youngest, which is different from being the middle child. And so I'm doing a lot of like research and like deep work, like reading in my own time, writing in my own time to figure out like what's going on. And just like having community accountability is like where I'm at too. Like I was in therapy for a very long time, from like 18 to 26. And now, like in the last 2 years, I'm 28 now, like being able to just like lean into community practice, like spiritual practice, like not holding anything back per se and not living from a place of secrecy. Cause I think growing up, one of the things my parents always said is like, don't talk about what's happening inside the family. And so like one of the books that I'm reading right now is like emotionally healthy spirituality. And so he lists out all of the ways family and intergenerational trauma can get in the way of our own healing and growth. So that's what I'm doing now. Accountability, therapy, community, art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything that you're mentioning, I feel like it really speaks to both of the groups, the group that you both have led, which is the eldest daughter of immigrant family groups that we have at the Yellow Trick Collective. Could both of you give a little bit of insight about what people can expect from that group and what your experiences as facilitators were like?
Yeah, do you want to go first, Esther?
Thinking about what are the things that I needed to hear from other people, um or what do I need, what are the parts of me that need to feel validated in my experience as an eldest daughter? Like particularly one of probably the most poignant parts for us in our group was this idea of the sense that rest is not safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's not safe for us to just sit down. And I actually like noticed this. My sister and I have always had this dynamic where she's really good at just hanging out. I I really respect that about her because like and we lived together for some time too. She would just sit in one place and I would be like running circles around her all day. And that was an experience that a lot of the other members really shared too. And being a facilitator of a group of eldest daughters was, I feel like it was honestly like life-changing. And so what people can expect is just speaking truth to our experiences, which also I think really enabled people to be brave in reckoning with some of the things that maybe they haven't had the space or the support to be able to do. Um, and in that bravery, carving a new path for yourself, maybe taking a risk that you normally wouldn't, or forging a new path for yourself. We were making this joke that I feel like a third of the ladies in my support group broke up with their fiancés. Another third left their jobs. Another third was just like, I think I'm just gonna quit everything and like go. Someone bought like these beautiful chickens, and they were like a theme throughout our support group. It was great. But really, and even for me as a facilitator, again, like I really walked into this space feeling like I didn't have my stuff figured out. And I put a lot of pressure on myself. That's probably that eldest daughter pressure again of like, I need to know what I'm talking about. But I came into this space. Helen and I have had this conversation of like, you know what, even when you don't know what to do, don't worry, someone in the room does. Like room of eldest daughters, like they're all leaders, they all know how to take charge and how to get what they need. And so like leave it up to them. And so I walked into the space and I was feeling so validated with every single conversation because they were and it really made me feel not so alone. It's like I'm not crazy for thinking this. There are other people who have had maybe not similar trajectories of life, but like this similar burdens that we hold that lead to these thoughts and experiences and the ways that we think about ourselves and others.
I'm imagining, Esther, because we had this like brief conversation about hair changes. Like at the end of the group experience, everyone just has like a different hairstyle. Like, life change. Would you give us a little bit of an insight of your thoughts and your world as you were leading the group as well?
Yeah, I think I was just surprised about how close my group got because at the end, because our last group is next week, the second week of October, and one person just put their number out there like, hey, I know everyone's struggling with something. If you ever just need a friend, like, here's my phone number, here's my email. And I just complimented her in that session. And I was just like, you're always the first person to show vulnerability in our sessions. And I feel like it's kind of unveiled vulnerability for everyone else, where everyone's kind of removing their eldest daughter mask and just being a human. And she sent me an email and she was like, that's the first time anyone has ever like validated my vulnerability. Like usually I label myself as someone who overshares or trauma dumps. And I didn't respond to that email, but I ended up like reaching out to her during group and just like checking in. But it's just been like a really great opportunity for a deeper connection. And I think what I've learned from eldest daughter group is a kind of like taking a step back because I'm always the one that's like running the ship and control. And so group work is so beautiful because Esther actually taught me this. She was like, one of the most valuable lessons she's learned as a pastor's kid is allowing people to connect with other people and not being the leader all the time. And so cohabitating in that space, everyone is just like so affirming and like coming from a place of care that I think that amount of generosity in a space has just created such a like safe place to cry. Like after every breakout room, everyone was like, I needed that. I could have kept going for another hour, deeper connection. And so I've gained a deeper love and appreciation for community healing, because I think that therapy is wonderful, but without people, like those reinforcements can't happen. So I'm glad that we have that opportunity available for our clients.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experience was to run the support group. We purposely made this a support group, not a therapy group. First of all, oldest daughter is not a diagnosis. It's, we gain certain traits and characteristics and certain burdens, but that community healing in that support of each other, connecting, learning together, unlearning together is such a beautiful journey. And we at Yellow Chair Collective, we are running Eldest Daughters of Immigrant Families pretty much ongoingly at this time. So anybody who's listening and would love to kind of learn more about the group or join to experience the power of community, please visit us at yellowchaircollective.com. And you will see on the top, there's a groups where you can explore different groups that we have.
This podcast is 100% self-funded by Yellow Chair Collective. You can support us by joining our support group.
Thank you so much for listening in today. We really enjoyed our talk as oldest daughters of immigrant families. This was Linda.
This is Sujin.
Thank you so much. Esther, Helen, thank you so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed this conversation as oldest daughters, and we hope to continue this conversation. So, yeah, we will explore. If you are interested in our conversation, please subscribe and follow our YouTube and podcast. Where are we also available, Helen?
We're on Apple Music, we're on Spotify, we're on any podcast platform that you listen to podcasts.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Helen and Esther.
Yeah.